Thank you very much. It's a great honor and a pleasure to be here with you this afternoon. I know I've seen some of you over time when I was serving in the Maine legislature. Glad to reconnect with some of my old friends here as well. And I want to let you know that it's amazing to think that the next year is the 25th anniversary of the Americans with Disability Act. It's gone by so far. We've come a long ways, but over the last 3.5 years, you've shown that we still have a long ways to go as well. In addressing the needs of those with disability is critically important. And Governor LePage has neglected these issues, and he has gone in the wrong direction. When you look at the mismanagement of Riverview and the refusal to expand access to health care under the Affordable Care Act. I made it very clear that on day one, under a Michaud administration, we're going to expand access to health care under the Affordable Care Act for the 70,000 men. The reason why I feel strongly about that is because not only is it the morally right thing to do to expand access, but it actually will save Maine money. We will save over $600 million over a 10-year time frame by expanding access for the 70,000 Mainers, of which 3,000 are veterans. Hospitals will receive an additional $348 million over that same time frame. And it's estimated that it will create about 3,000 jobs here in the state of Maine. It's a win-win all the way around. And the fact that you're covering 70,000 Mainers for those who do have health care coverage, it actually will help hold down the cost because of the cost shifting that's currently occurring. And I'm told that over a 10-year time frame, the amount of money that will be brought into the state of Maine under the Affordable Care Act is about $3 billion. That's a lot of money to be leaving on the table. And because this governor's ideology is refusing to accept it. I feel strongly about this because this is an area where actually I voted for the Affordable Care Act. And I know some of you called me up and said, Michaud, why don't you support it? And I said, well, I'm not going to support it because it doesn't take care of Maine. That's on reimbursement rates. And a bunch of us held out long enough until we actually were able to get that enhanced reimbursement rate. That's why, under the Affordable Care Act, Maine does so well, is because of that enhanced reimbursement rate. So on day one, I'll be submitting legislation to the legislature under the Affordable Care Act to expand access to health care. So I'm very glad to do that. And hopefully we'll be able to get the legislature to pass it. They passed it 5 times, and unfortunately the governor vetoed it 5 times. But we'll put it right back on my desk, hopefully, when I'm governor of the state of Maine. Next, when you look at what's happening over the last 3.5 years, I want to make, under a Michaud administration, government work. A government that cares about everyone, not just a select few, and is willing to work with advocates. Have the commissioners work with advocates, bureau directors working with advocates, and make sure that the department has the resources it needs to adequately fund and do what they have to do. And to crack down on mismanagement like we saw at Riverview recently. There are a lot of work that we have to do to make up the difference of what we've seen over the last 3.5 years with this administration. And I'm eager to start. We have dental care issues as it relates to rural areas. We have heating assistance issues, affordable housing. There's a lot of work to do. I'm very excited about it because having served in the Maine legislature on the Appropriation Committee and as President of the Senate when we had an evenly divided Senate, and as a member of Congress for the last 12 years, I feel very comfortable that we'll be able to actually move this state forward in a very positive direction because I do have the vision, I have the experience, and I have the commitment to move us forward. And actually, I'm the only candidate in this race that actually has a proven track record of being able to work across the aisle to get things done. When I was president of the Maine Senate, as some of you know, We had 17 Democrats, 17 Republicans, and 1 independent. And a lot of people thought that was going to be a nightmare, because if anyone was sick on any given day, it would depend on who was in the majority. But it worked out well. And the reason why it worked out extremely well was because every day I had Republicans and Democrats in my office going over the legislative calendar in an informal way. It did speed up the process, but the second thing it did, the fact we were meeting every day in my office going over the legislative calendar, it built up trust and open line of communication. And that's what's missing today, that trust and open line of communication. All you have to do is look at the 180 vetoes that this governor has issued as governor. So I'm very hopeful that we'll be able to have a legislature that is willing to roll up its sleeves and really focus on getting to work, because we have a lot of lost ground that we have to deal with. And before I open up for questions in closing, I want to once again thank all the advocates for what you've been doing over a number of years here in the state of Maine. I will encourage you to keep moving forward, to doing what you're doing, advocating for these very important issues, because we do have a lot of work to get done. So with that, I want to thank you very much and open up for questions.
Okay. I think my mic is dead.
Oh, your mic's dead?
Yeah, so we'll have to hand back and forth. Sorry about
Okay.
that. We're a hokey outfit here. Thank you for that. I can't believe you guys didn't clap like crazy when he said thank you to the advocates. Thank you.
Testing. Oh, your mic works.
Good. Is this one working? Okay.
You're just going to push the on button.
Oh! Thanks.
I think my opponent probably turned it off when he left, hoping I wouldn't be able to talk. So.
You just showed you know how to get things done.
All right. Number 1, being treated with dignity and respect is very important to people with disabilities. Decisions are often made about us, without us. How would you actively reach out to people with disabilities to ensure that governmental decision-making processes include people with disabilities? Similarly, what would you do to make sure that you have qualified people with disabilities on your own staff?
Well, thank you very much. Over my tenure in the Maine legislature, as well as a member of Congress, I've always reached out to a lot of different groups here in Maine and actually all across the country. And I always have had an open door policy. I have a long history of that, working with advocates during my tenure, and I'll continue to do that. I know that over the last 3.5 years, you have not had an administration that's that's been welcoming. And I can assure you that under a Michaud administration, you definitely will have a seat at the table. And as far as my staff, actually one of the things where I'm on the Veterans Affairs Committee in Washington, and I care deeply about our veterans and our disabled veterans. And there's actually a program that they have with the Wounded Warriors program, and I've been participating in that particular program. We actually have a wounded warrior who's actually working in our office, in the Lewiston office, and we've had a couple of them working with us, and we'll continue to do so as well. So.
Great. Thank you. Get my glasses. All right, sorry. Number 2, in Maine and nationally, the employment rate of people with disabilities is about half that of people without disabilities. People with disabilities seeking employment still face discrimination in hiring and the denial of work opportunities that might lift them from poverty. What steps would you take to improve employment opportunities for people with disabilities in Maine? This is a multi-part question. What can Maine government do to hire and retain qualified workers with disabilities? In other words, how can the state be a model employer? It is currently legal to pay people with disabilities as low as 22 cents an hour. There are numerous individuals in Maine still working at this sub-minimum wage. If elected, would you support our efforts to eliminate sub-minimum wage?
Okay, the first thing that the state must do is, when it hires and retains workers, whether they're has a disability or not, is to show the workers respect. And that was big disappointment when I hear what this governor has done, talking about state employees being crooks. I've worked in the legislature for a number of years, and I know there are a lot of state employees are very dedicated, hardworking individuals. And whether, so we've got a few state employees here, huh? And we must treat them with respect. One of the things I'll do on day one, under my, there we go. Under day one of my administration, I'll be reaching out to state employees. I'm not sure what mess this governor's going to leave us in, but it's going to be a huge mess financially. We're going to be faced with a huge shortfall right from the get-go because those huge tax cuts that this governor and the legislature had passed. So I'll be reaching out to state employees to actually get their input on how can we make state government more efficient, more effective, and provide the services that we need here as a state. And we must recognize that state employees actually do play a very important role in providing services for our state. Governor LePage has demeaned, showed disrespect for our state workers since he's been in office. And I will not do that. I have always had an inclusive way about myself as far as including people into that particular process, listen to their values and their inputs, and how we can actually move forward. We also have to break down the barriers to employment, which includes making public buildings accessible, ADA accessible, number one. And I have a real concern when you look at the sub-minimum wage issue. It appears that to me that it is discriminatory and actually violates the ADA regulation in Congress. Actually, in Congress, I co-sponsored the fair wage for workers.
Oh, for crying out loud.
Try yours. Testing. No, in Congress, actually, I co-sponsored the Fair Wage for Workers with Disability Act, which would phase out the sub-minimum wage. Didn't know that, did you?
No, I forgot all about that. It's great.
So hopefully, well, nothing's going to happen in the short term. We're all in session until after the election. I'm not sure whether or not we'll be able to bring that up during the lame duck session or not with this Congress. I kind of doubt it, but hopefully we'll be able to address it, in the next Congress. It's on the table and definitely has an issue that we have to discuss. So that bill would actually phase it out, as you well know.
That's great. That is fantastic. Thank you. Oh. I'm sorry about the microphone issue.
Oh, that's no problem.
All right, number 3. People living below the poverty level are not eligible. This is kind of an easy one. Do you support main care expansion?
Yes.
Do you want to say anything more about that?
I talked about that briefly in my opening remarks. And I will be submitting legislation on day one to expand access under the Affordable Care Act. But also, we got to be doing a lot more than that. When I rolled out my 10-point plan on health care, I brought a lot of people in to actually help work on that. And we do have a 10-point plan. And we're also going to be looking at other areas of, in exchange. Not only Maine, but whether or not Maine, actually, New Hampshire and Vermont might want to participate in an exchange to help with the cost. So I'm looking outside the box and really trying to figure out what we can do to get more people covered here with health care, not only by the expansion, but also looking at exchanges.
Okay, great. I have to do the interruption thing again, I apologize, but I cannot see the clock. So, Peter, will you make sure you raise your hand, Ty, when it's 2:30 so that we can send him on his way? Thank you. Number 4, people with disabilities and advocates are frustrated that after the ADA has been passed for 24 and a half years, public buildings are still being approved and built that are not accessible. how would you propose to ensure that businesses make their facilities accessible? And would you support a system of community access monitors? Specifically, though, I should tell you, there is, right now we're dealing with an issue. There is a hotel that was built in Portland, the south end of Commercial Street, brand new, national chain, 3 big steps to get in the front door. So that's what we're frustrated about.
I understand your frustrations, and actually I was just at that hotel just recently, so for a meeting, so I understand your frustration as far as accessibility, and I'll do everything I can, particularly on the new constructions, to make sure that they do meet ADA requirements. And actually, I think Massachusetts, has a program that's been successful, and I want to talk to the folks in Massachusetts, see what they're doing down there as far as their community action monitoring program. I hear that's quite successful, and I want to be able to see what they're doing, see if we can actually implement that up here in the state of Maine. My only concern is would be the cost, some of the costs, but that's something that we can address once we see what Massachusetts has done and whether or not it is successful.
Okay, I'm probably not supposed to do editorial comments, but I just wanted to let you know that we are Alpha One and Disability Rights Center are working with that group in Massachusetts right now to see what pieces of it we can bring to Maine.
But well, keep on working so that hopefully when I'm sworn in office, we'll be able to hit the ground running.
That's right. Okay. And the 5th question is, in view of the current economic crisis that you're talking about, you're going to inherit, and the likelihood that Maine will be faced with even greater pressure on our state budget in coming months, are you willing to make a priority of defending crucial services and supports for Maine people with disabilities? Do you have ideas on how best to insulate Maine citizens with disabilities from cuts in their essential services?
One of the things that, as I mentioned, when it is going to be a mess. And other than expanding access to health care under the Affordable Care Act on day one, I'm going to ask for a complete audit of the Department of Health and Human Services. I know some folks are saying, well, why would you do that? You might find out that you have to pay the federal government more money back, so we're not complying with the law. For me personally, I'd much rather know where we're at when I'm in office at the beginning, so we can try to address the problems later on. And unlike this current governor, I will work with the federal government to try to solve these problems. I will not tell them to do what the governor said he'd tell the president to do. So I will be asking for a complete audit for the Department of Health and Human Services. I'm also proposing, dealing with the Department of Health and Human Services, an Office of Inspector General. For every federal agency, they have an Office of Inspector General that deals with waste, fraud, and abuse, and mismanagement. And I'm going to create that office. It'll be a very small office. We're going to be moving positions from Health and Human Services, from the audit, and from the Attorney General's office into the Office of Inspector General. And the reason why I feel so strongly about that, particularly after the 3.5 years under this administration, is there has been a lot of mismanagement. You look at the Riverview situation, you look at the $1 million for the Alexander report, you look at the CDC shredding, and it can go on and on as far as the mismanagement. And with the Office of Inspector General, their job would be to look at that, but it's completely separate from the governor's office, completely separate from the Department of Health and Human Services. The Inspector General will be nominated by the governor, confirmed by the state senate for either a 5 or 7-year time frame, and then it'll be very helpful for the legislature. One of the problems, having been in the legislature, particularly with the Department of Health and Human Services, I believe they spend approximately $3.8 billion a year between state and federal dollars. It's a complex department, dealing with Medicaid, Medicare, dealing with dual eligibles. It's a complex department. And a part-time legislature that they're supposed to have oversight of that department, it's very difficult for them to do that. And especially under this administration, where he has refused to allow the commissioners to speak before the committee, Now it's my understanding that if they want to ask questions of the department, they have to have it in writing. You know, the legislature is a co-equal branch of government. And I've served in the Maine legislature both on the House side and the Senate side, and the disrespect that this administration has shown towards the legislative process is just unconscionable. And as governor, having served in the legislature, I respect the legislators, Republicans and Democrats. I know they got a very difficult job that they have to do, but that they're out there every day trying to represent your interest in Augusta. And I want to make sure that they have the tools that they need to do their job and do their job appropriately. Having said that, as far as getting back to you know, part of the question, it depends on where we're at financially. But as governor, I'm going to do everything I can to get as much federal dollars here into the state that we're leaving on the table. And we are leaving millions of dollars on the table because of the ideology of this governor. A good example is he's refusing to ask for a waiver under the SNAP program. If you're 3 months, you're on food stamps, that's it, you gotta wait for 3 years. Well, we're leaving, that's federal dollars, we're leaving $15 million a year on the table. It's not all about money, it's people that need that food. As some of you know, coming from the Katahdin region throughout the whole state, we have workers here that have been unemployed for quite some time, longer than the 3 months that the governor thinks that they can go out and find a job, because they can't, it's very difficult. Good Shepherd told me that they estimated, because what the governor is doing with that 3-month time cutoff, not asking for that waiver, is that they're going to have to serve another 5 million meals a year because of that. And that's wrong on so many different counts. It's one thing, and people say, well, you know, the governor's kind of funny when he says some of this stuff, you know, I don't think it's, you know, the rhetoric that he's expounding is one thing and terrible, but the implications of his failed policy is another thing. It's devastating. We have more children today living in poverty than we've had before. Nationally, when you look at homelessness, it's going down nationally on average. In Maine, it went up 26%. Child abuse up, is it 58%? These are devastating numbers. And it gets back to these failed policies of this governor. And he likes to demonize, you know, welfare. When I rolled out my proposal for the Office of Inspector General, you know, I talked about the governor and what he keeps saying about welfare, just get him off the couch, get him to work. You know, there are some people, through no fault of their own, have fallen on hard times. And as governor, I'm going to focus on how we can lift people out of poverty, not just cutting off their benefits. There's 2 ways to get them off. One, kick them off like this governor is doing, or the second way is to help lift them off. And you can help lift them off. You don't have to demonize them. And I get right back to my situation in the Millinocket area. For years, that community didn't have to worry about a thing because the mill took care of us, made good wages, good health care, good money. Didn't have to worry about a thing. It's been very tough up there recently. And the fact that when I seen grown men who never had to worry in their life about anything, when they had to go to the food pantries for food, they felt ashamed, they felt worthless, and they had tears in their eyes because they didn't want to have to do it. Now, it's unfortunate that a country that we live in today, that you have to feel that way if you fall on hard times. We shouldn't. And this governor's not making it any easier for anyone. Not at all. And when I took after the governor's rhetoric after we had that press conference, and I checked into a hotel actually in Portland, the lady came out and she saw the press conference and she thanked me. She said, Congressman, I want you to know that I had to get some assistance myself, my daughter. I didn't want to, I needed it. And I'm glad I received it. But she said, you know, I was able to lift myself up. I have a job now, and she's very happy. But she said what the governor says and how he says it, she said, is wrong. And it is. As governor, I'm going to do everything that I can to talk about poverty issues and how can we lift people up out of poverty by setting a positive agenda, an agenda that'll make a difference in people's lives, an agenda that you don't have to be ashamed if you fall on hard times, an agenda that will make Maine a model around the country on what we can do. So once again, keep up your advocacy. Don't give up. There are better days ahead. I'm very positive of the future here in the state of Maine. So thank you very much and God bless.